Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another Tri-Merit webinar. I'm super excited today to have Denise Thomas as my co-host, guest speaker, extraordinaire, everything. Denise, I'll introduce you in a second, but welcome to the webinar.
Thank you.
So any of you that are on today have been a part of this in the past. You know that we do a series, Bridging the Gap preview series. Bridging the Gap is our conference that'll happen July 22nd, 23rd, and 24th in Denver, Colorado this year. We are very excited about having Denise as one of our keynote speakers. We are not going to steal her thunder from the conference with talking about what she'll be talking about there, but Denise is multi-talented, talks about many things, and today we'll be talking about the power of perspective, leading through change with purpose and clarity. I'm excited about this. It sounds like a great topic to me. Before we get into that, there's a little housekeeping we need to do. And we are eligible for CPE with this. There's a few requirements as you, the attendee, need to do. You need to stay logged in for at least 50 minutes, not hitting the 50-minute mark on the calendar, on the clock, but 50 minutes from when you logged in. And you have to answer 3 of the 4 polling questions. These will pop up just randomly, well, about 10 minutes apart during the presentation. I will try to nicely interrupt Denise if she's in mid-sentence and say polling question is up, just so you all know. I know you all will be paying complete attention to your screen, but just in case, want to give you a warning that the polling question is up so you get your CPE for this. We will email the certificates to the email address you registered with. One thing I want to let you know is make sure you check your spam or junk email folder just in case. And if you still didn't get it within a couple days, and Mark or Haley will clarify that for me, but I think within a couple days you should really get your certificate. Then you can reach out to us. So just make sure you check all the folders beforehand. We haven't seemed to have any issues with that, so everything should be good. If you've been on any of ours before, you know who I am, Randy Crabtree. I co-founder of Tri-Merit. I get to do a lot of cool things in the profession, like talk to Denise, which we did yesterday on the Unique CPA podcast, which will be coming out in the next few weeks. So excited to watch for that. And there's some other stuff. We will just skip that and we'll get to the important person of the hour, which is Denise Thomas, or DT if you want to call her. Before I even get into everything about DT, the most important thing, well, to me, that you need to know is she's a big Chicago Bears fan. So that is being a Chicago Bears fan.
Everybody dropping off now, Randy.
I'm scaring them away, but I do know we normally have some Packers fans in here, so it'll be a fun year with Bears and Packers, and we have some Vikings fans on these webinars often too, or at least that we will on the YouTube channel. So real quick, I want to give you an introduction to Denise. Denise is the powerhouse behind the Effective Communication Coach, where she transforms high-performing professionals into influential leaders, one impactful conversation at a time. With over 20 years of leadership experience inside Fortune 100 giants like PepsiCo, Toyota, GE, Denise brings unmatched expertise in cross-cultural high-stakes communication. She's coached professionals from, you see everything here. I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to highlight NFL, which is cool. Multi-award-winning entrepreneur, certified executive coach. Denise is known for a dynamic energy, which I can attest to. Real-world insights, I can attest to. Laser-sharp strategies, I can attest to. And for her help leaders of finance and beyond elevate their voice and their results. Denise, I'm so excited to have you here today.
I am so excited to be here with you and all of the incredible attendees who have made time to join us today, Randy. And thank you so much for that heartfelt, warm, and exciting intro. Now I've got to live up to those standards that you set. So I'm excited to be here.
I don't think that'll be a problem for you. Based on our conversation yesterday, we will be good. One thing I want to remind you that this is, I mentioned at the beginning, these are free CPE to you, the audience, and Tri-Merit's behind that. And just as a reminder, Tri-Merit's a specialty a tax professional firm. We deal with credits and incentives, and we're there to support you on that. With that being said, Mark, if you want to take the slides off, and Denise and I are going to get into this discussion that we highlighted at the top there. But one thing we said at the beginning is that there's a lot out there when it comes to being a thoughtful leader and everything that's tied to mindset and perspectives. And so you talk about mindset, which I love mindset. I love talking about mindset. But what are some of the common limiting beliefs leaders hold during change, and how can they reframe these?
Such a great question, Randy. And in my response, I want to remind everyone in this room, first and foremost, that we are good people. And for whatever reasons, based on a lot of the information that we consume, even as leaders, it takes a toll. And so to answer your question, Randy, one of the most common limiting beliefs that I hear as an executive and leadership coach is, if I don't have all the answers, I'll lose credibility. Or if I say something wrong, or if I bring in a change, it may break my team. But here's the truth, Randy. Your power as a leader, it does not come from having all of the answers. I want to level set that. You do not have to have all of the answers to be regarded as a powerful and impactful leader. It comes from asking the right questions. It comes from staying adaptable and modeling this feeling that oftentimes we navigate, which is courage, especially when the situation is unknown. And so reframing that belief, it means that you have to shift from, I need to be perfect, I've got to be perfect, to I need to be present. Because that presence is what builds trust among your team, whether they're peers, direct reports, or even your leaders. That presence alone, and knowing that you are still being an impactful leader, will again organically build that trust, and it is what will drive performance. Trust drives performance.
And one thing that you and I talked about yesterday was vulnerability, and the importance, I think, of being a vulnerable leader. And things you just said there was like, you don't have to have all the answers. I think leaders sometimes are afraid if they don't have all the answers, it's going to be a sign of weakness. But in reality, showing that you don't have all the answers, then you need other people's help, and you need everybody to be part of the team, and you need everybody to contribute. That leadership by itself, and sorry, you're the coach, but I guess this is the question.
Great.
That leadership by itself is what's important. So leaders don't have to have all the answers. I think that's a misconception that we have. We're told growing up, hey, you got to be strong. You can't cry. You can't show emotions. You can't do this. You have to do that. And so the vulnerability aspect, which you were alluding to, for me, is one of the most important things when you come into the leadership mindset.
And Randy, I have to build off of what you just shared, which was so beneficial and in alignment with the vulnerability piece. And I want to encourage each of the attendees, and we're going to dive into more of this during the Bridging the Gap conference next month. I want to encourage each of you to shift from that control mindset to a curiosity mindset, because that is exactly what transparency is. It's asking the question, for example, what's the opportunity here that wasn't visible before? And especially when you're talking about, financial risk taking, it parallels leadership, because leadership oftentimes is most demonstrated during those risk assessments or during those risk challenges. So in both, we must trust the process. In addition to the data, in addition to our instincts, we must trust the process. And during that, again, change your mindset from control, or I'm feeling like I'm losing control, to that curiosity mindset.
Yep. Nope. I agree completely. The one thing you mentioned too, at the beginning, was the trust aspect of things, and my bias on vulnerability is going to shine through a lot probably today. But there's a study out there that shows that leaders who display vulnerability gain trust at a 60% higher level than leaders that don't lead with vulnerability. So trust as a leadership, having the trust of the people you work with, for me, a big part of that comes through vulnerability, but having them have the trust in you as is important. And I'm always of the mindset is I'm going to start with a default level of trust. I'm going to trust the people that I'm going to trust the people that I work with. And I think that's a great place to start. But do you have any comments on trust and gaining trust, or is just everything you say from a leadership standpoint should solidify trust within the people you work with?
Randy, I had a client one time during our coaching sessions, speaking of vulnerability, had shared with me that they were struggling with gaining trust from their team. And I said, well, what are you basing that on? And he said, well, if I make an announcement or when I share, a vision regarding business objectives, there's not a lot of response. There's not a lot of input. Now, the execution is there. Like my team, if I say something, they're going to do it. But I don't feel as though the trust is there in terms of them being able to trust that their input or their suggestions, even though they may counter what I said, be of value. And especially when it's a high risk situation. And so what I did was I encouraged him, Randy, and I'm encouraging everyone in this room too, is what makes us experts is experience. And not to disregard or discount accolades and the multiple decorations that we've earned, whether it's, postgraduate degree, PhD, other, CPA, which is great because those are certifications that further validate our credibility in our arena. In addition to that, don't forget about those experiences where you failed, because that is the greatest teacher. And again, we talked about that. That's one of my favorite Yodisms. So when you're building trust with your team, use phrases like, I've been here before. When I first started my career, or I was a senior manager at company X and this happened. Start with the situation, then share the action, and then start to talk about the impact. Like, how did that change your perception of leadership? And how did you overcome? Because the more that, again, you're transparent combined with vulnerability, the two cousins of leadership, you will organically feel that trust from your team. Because think about it. It's just like, Randy, the first time you saw your school teacher at the grocery store, you were like, wait a minute, you don't live in the school? Like That's right. You have yes. And so the more that you demonstrate that you're a human being that has overcome challenges and mistakes, and you're still here, and you're still successful, and you're still helping your employer be profitable, and it's still a great place to work, that's what builds the trust.
Yep. And I'm going to stop for a second and let everybody know that first polling question is up. So everybody get their responses in. I closed it on my end. It's still open for everybody else. But make sure you respond in there. We want you to get your CPA. All right, while that's up, I'm going to continue building off that. So you just kind of mentioned, changing perspective, changing mindset. We're kind of in the mindset perspective aspect of things right now. And you just kind of shared a time, but I don't know if you have a personal story or a story of you coaching with somebody where, shifting perspective changed the outcome of a tough situation that you or one of your people that you work with was facing as a leader.
Absolutely.
Right.
It was, so Randy, about, I would say right after the pandemic, I was working with a leadership team who saw my coaching initially as a check in the box. And this was during a time of restructuring. So they felt as though, hey, we're going to bring in Denise as a leadership coach. And it really just initially felt like a check in the box. And so instead of seeing that resistance as a personal rejection, I shifted my perspective and I said, okay, what if this is fear masked as a pushback? And Randy, that lens changed everything. I adjusted my approach and I focused less on the strategic element of my coaching and more on empathy. And so within 2 sessions, that same group became vocal champions of the change because I met them where they were.
Right.
And that is oftentimes what it takes as leaders, especially leaders that lead and motivate high performance among people, is no one typically is going to raise their hand, Randy, and say, I am scared of this. I am fearing what is going on, especially as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see your team members demonstrating pushback or rejection, don't personalize it. Don't consume that and convince yourself that this has something to do with the way that you're leading. Take a step back. And again, the mindset, focus less on the strategy and again, more on the empathy. And you will see that organic shift and the mindset change towards the desired outcome.
Yep. And I love what you said there with empathy. Empathy is something I've had to really study a little bit more because especially with, I share a lot of professions, but our profession in public accounting, we're helping people all the time. This is what we do. Same with you, with your communication coaching and that, and what your leadership coaching, you're helping people all the time. And so our inclination is to have the answers and immediately just say, here's how you can solve this. But with empathy, sometimes it's not that some person needs to hear. They're not looking for an answer. They're just looking for you to understand the situation that they're currently in. Is that something that you've run into as well?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because in response to your question, I want to share another personal or client story, I should say, and you'll really appreciate this. So I once was coaching a CFO and she had said to me, Denise, I'm realizing now that my team isn't underperforming. And this was after about 3 or 4 of our sessions. She said, I'm realizing that my team isn't underperforming because she initially had retained my coaching services due to talent retention. Okay, there was a lot of employee turnover and she was associating that with her team underperforming. After about our 3rd session, she said, okay, Denise, the light bulb just went off. I'm realizing that this is not a matter of underperforming. This is a matter of being under communicating. I am not communicating enough with my team. And that shift, Randy, helped her implement weekly alignment huddles. That's what we categorize it. We're gonna have weekly alignment huddles. So get creative. Check-ins don't have to be this formal structured, every 3rd Wednesday we meet for an hour. They could be as organic and as flexible as need to be. And so these weekly alignment huddles, she and I both designed them to be 15 to 20 minute increments. And it boosted not only the clarity, but it also boosted the morale. And guess what? She then noticed quickly the performance was now not even just meeting her expectations as CFO, but we're exceeding.
Nice. Yep. So that, I guess that's ties into what I was going to ask next, which we may have just answered, but I'm guessing there is more to it. So, let's assume that, as a profession, accountants are kind of overwhelmed right now and can get emotionally drained. I think there's things we can do about it, but I think our mindset sometimes causes us to overwork and overhelp and get overwhelmed and emotionally drained. And so when we're in that situation, how do you work with leaders to help them cultivate this perspective change? Hey, this is not how you have to do it. This is ways we can change it and get rid of this overwhelming, draining issue that we're dealing with.
Such a great question. Such a responsible, healthy, good question, Randy. And I'm so appreciative that you're asking that because, for a lot of us, especially in this climate of rapid change, uncertainty, and really elevating our need to adapt. Adaptability right now, if you are an adaptable leader, congratulations, do a podcast, call the New York Times because you are operating with the secret sauce. But for others like me, that again have been navigating, even as a coach, the feeling of feeling overwhelmed or emotionally drained. First, let me say this to each of us. You are not alone. You would be surprised. No, you wouldn't be surprised. But there are a number of executives that I'm working with as their coach that are just flat out drained. So the first thing I want you to do is give yourself grace and know that you're not alone. The second thing I want you to do is give yourself permission to pause.
Yes.
Okay. Give yourself permission to pause, because too often, especially finance leaders, you're sprinting through pressure, processes, formalities, and this is like monthly in addition to daily, without processing what you need. So I coach clients to use what I call a perspective reset. And what that means, Randy, is that you're going to take a step back. You're going to name what's fact versus what is fear. And I want you to ask yourself, what would the leader that I aspire to be do next? Because perspective isn't something that you wait for. It is something that you build through reflection, mentorship, and mindfulness. So again, I want each of us in this room as leaders, whether we're individual contributors, people leaders, especially in the finance industry, what would the leader that I aspire to be do next in those situations?
Yep.
That answered your question.
It did. And what I
Okay.
like about that is that, you know, look at what you're doing, reevaluate what you're doing, and then be honest with yourself. And I haven't, I'm going to go on a little story here for a second. But for me, this was a big changing moment in my life, in my career, when I actually did that. You know, when we started our business 18 years ago, I was managing partner for the first 10 years. And I identified in my mind, the mindset I had, and the perspectives was probably wrong. I identified as managing partner. This is who I am. That's my personality. This is my thing. And when I stepped back and analyzed, like you just said, and looked at it and really truly looked at what I was doing, I was like, this is not my role. This is not who I am. This is not really what I enjoy. I enjoy starting businesses. I enjoy, you know, starting to grow them, but I'm not a process, procedure, KPI, all that type of person. And so changing my perspective on who I really am, that really, you know, multifold had positive impact on our company, because someone really got into that managing partner role who was equipped for it. I got to find the role that I was equipped for, which is educating, being passionate about moving this profession forward. And everybody in our organization felt open to say, well, this is the role I should be in, or here's where my skills are used best. And so just changing my perspective on who I thought I was when my mind was tricking me, and that's not really who I was, just has a positive impact. So I think mindset, as we were just closing out the mindset, and perspectives is something that can actually play tricks on you. So be honest with yourself and really look at what you're doing and analyze it, and then find out where the best use of your skills and talents are.
Yes. And can I just give one more recommendation?
You can say anything you want.
Thank you. You provoked something that I share with my clients. And so I'm going to recommend this to your audience as well. It's called the leadership clarity practice. And what that entails is that just make or carve out, I'm serious, as soon as you're starting your morning, not when you get into the office, but this could be even when you're taking a shower, brushing your teeth, getting ready. Just carve out 10 minutes each morning to reflect on three things. The first thing is, what matters most today? And just so you know, everyone, I do this every day. It's just second nature for me. I should say first nature. So first thing, what matters most today? Number two, what can I control today? Focus on like what I can control, change, or influence. And the third thing is, who needs my leadership the most? Like, who needs my leadership the most in order to thrive today? Anything else that does not fall into either of those three categories, those are things that you might just need to accept. Because if I can't change it, if I can't control it, if I can't influence, and if it's not in regards to what matters the most today, or who needs my leadership the most to get to whatever our desired outcomes for the day is, then I accept it and I don't channel my energy towards that. So again, that's the leadership clarity practice. And that's the reason why I'm so excited for my book to come out. My book is coming out in a couple of months, only one in the room. And I'm going to be giving all of these techniques and practices in the book. But at least I wanted to share that with your incredible audience right now.
No, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love that a lot. A friend of mine, Dawn Brolin. Next polling question's up. Just making sure everybody knows it. I'm closing on my end, but they'll stay open for all you. A friend of mine, Dawn Brolin, has a similar philosophy, but it's more of she just is like, what's important now, which is win. What's important? Let's win. Let's win today. What's important now? WIN. What's important now? And so I love that. I just actually finished a presentation 2 hours ago. I'm in St. Louis at a firm where I talked about, not having this 82-page to-do list, because the things on page 82, even the things on page 2, are not important now. And so let's do what we can do. Let's control what we can control, and let's not let our mind track to these other things that are just going to disrupt the noise in our head and now not allow us to concentrate on the things that we can control. I love what you just said. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Because again, pressure is real. It's real right now, but it's also a choice. And so I want to again encourage your audience to choose their perspective and understand that your perspective, it shapes your power.
Yep.
Your perspective shapes your power.
Oh, I can attest to that. I grew up, my dad always had a saying, which is, you can be anything you want to be, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I've listened to that. I've heard it. I've asked them 2 months ago, do you remember saying this? You go, oh yeah, I know. I remember saying that. And so this is something that I'm so important. And it just goes back to mindset, but your mind can do the wrong way too. And so you have to I kind of adjusting it and saying, you can do anything you put your positive mindset to. So I told my dad I'm going to edit his saying. All right, let's move on. That was on actually technically our learning objective number 1, which is mindset and perspective. And let's move on to what we talked about, which is learning objective number 2 in this webinar, which is talking about clear and purpose-driven communication. Let's start with this. What's the biggest communication mistakes you see leaders make during, and let's talk about uncertain times. I mean, as an accounting profession, there's uncertain times right now. People are not coming in. We're getting stressed out. There's uncertainty with tax law as we sit right now on this webinar. I think there's some very significant things happening with tax law this very moment. And so uncertain times, where there's some big communication mistakes you see leaders making.
Oh, that's another such a great question. I'm saying because I want, as passionate as I am about this question, I want to be very loving, healthy, respectful. Okay. So here's the biggest communication mistake that I often see leaders make, especially as you had mentioned during these uncertain times and these times of rapid, impactful change. A lot of times leaders try to manage the message instead of leading the moment.
Okay.
People, Randy, do not need polished perfection, especially during uncertainty. Okay. We need honesty, direction with a sprinkle of hope. Because when leaders over edit or, under communicate to kind of create this safeguard, or even delay difficult truths, harsh realities, they are unintentionally creating more confusion. I want to underscore unintentionally, because we all have the best intentions. But remember, and this is a big one, Randy, that's a whole other session. Maybe if you invite me to come back next year. There's intention, which for all of us in this room, 99.9% of the time, our intentions are good, but there's also impact. And so as leaders, you have to understand that although your intention may have been for the best, all of these things, whether you're under communicating, whether you're delaying difficult truths, they're going to create more confusion with your team. And so the most powerful leaders that I've coached, they are the ones that speak early, they speak often, and they speak, Randy, with humility. And so that's a big part as well, is, that humility, which coincides with the transparency and the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, a lot of us as leaders, we're navigating our sense of purpose, and that's fair. And that impacts, how we're communicating. So I want people to really understand that the less you speak, the more assumptions you're going to have to navigate. And assumptions, as we all know, rarely work in our favor.
Yep. No. So what we're doing right now, Andy, who's our managing partner now, he's doing these like almost daily updates on this tax bill. And this is the uncertainty we're going through right now, because this tax bill that's out there right now is going to affect Tri-Merit significantly in different ways, some positive, some negative. And so being quiet on it and letting people just think whatever they want to think is minds can go anywhere. And so Andy's doing a great job of trying to get that message out of where we are today, where we are this hour, even sometimes, because hour to hour can have a major impact on what we're doing. And so I guess when there is a lot of noise out there, which we have a ton of noise out there right now, is there advice on, and we kind of just talked about, but clarifying that message, how to make sure that message is going through with also not hiding any negative aspects, but making sure that we can create some positivity out of it, or if we can't, maybe we can't, but just at least clarity out of it. Is there advice that you help getting messages not lost in the noise?
Yeah, because I'm doing a lot of that right now. And, before I answer your question, I'll just say this. I was just sharing with one of my clients that this year has been the year of coaching. And I know you're thinking, well, Denise, you're the effective communication coach. Well, a lot of what I was doing last year and the year before was keynote speaking. And so I have a portfolio of services that include, talk radio, voiceovers, MC, et cetera, obviously group coaching, keynote. But this is the year that the coaching element has just skyrocketed. And a lot of it has to do with, how do I make sure as a leader that my messaging is not getting lost in that noise? So I love that question, because change right now, it's at its peak. And so I'm gonna answer it this way. I'm encouraging your audience to start with this. What is the one thing that you want your team to remember, repeat, and act on? So I'm gonna say that again. What is the one thing that you want as a leader, that you want your team to remember, to repeat, and to act on? Because that is what becomes your leadership anchor. And then what I want you to consider is layering in that storytelling. Storytelling, y'all, it's a game changer. Mm-hmm. Because when we read from a script, and I'm going to ask you this, Randy, who uses scripts? Who reads from scripts?
Actors. They're not authentic then.
Exactly. So when you make it personal, not only are you making it relevant, it then ties that message back to the mission. Because you're going to organically, through that story, and you tie it back to the mission and vision of your organization, that right there is what's going to rise above the noise. So it's not just about informing your team. It's also about inspiring your team through the transparency, through the personal storytelling, through the personal experiences, and making that relevant. So that's a great technique to employ as part of ensuring that your messaging, whether it's day to day, multiple times throughout the day as we're navigating through this change, does not get lost in that noise.
Yeah, I love the storytelling aspect. I think stories are there's a big part of what I do as a presenter, as my talks and that. And it's funny, for the first time in my life, I'm working with a speech. I don't know if you call him a coach, a speech, but the first thing he did was start categorizing or cataloging all my stories. He said, just tell me every story that you share. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make an inventory of those. And then there's certain times where you can take those out to help this message that you want to share, really meet people where you're hoping it does. So yeah, storytelling, that's my commentary. And storytelling, I think, is an amazing thing. But let's move on from that, Rick, unless you wanted to add anything. Otherwise, I'm going to move on.
Because again, every time you speak, Randy, you provoke my mind, you stimulate my mind. So I just want to say this, as finance professionals, we love precision. I'm saying we, because I coach and partner with a lot of people in the finance industry. So it's very critical to be precise. Just make sure that as you're creating messages for your team, focus more again on the storytelling instead of being so robotic, because sometimes you're coming off as, good morning, thank you. It's very robotic, which then is going to take away from the passion and the authenticity. So precision can be combined with passion. And that's where you're going to have the clarity join the influence.
Nice. All right. Well, let's finish up talking about this, the clear, purpose-driven communication with one last question here, because there can, and like this scenario I was just talking about, where we're sharing Andy's sharing what's going on with the tax bill. So how do you make sure that leaders are that their communication is authentic, but maybe not oversharing, maybe not causing fear? Because there could be a time where, like, every single change that happens, we're starting to share and let's go. And it's like, okay, let's just share this message that we're at a point where we're getting people informed, but maybe not creating fear. Is there a fine line there that we need to navigate?
Oh my goodness, yes. And again, that's such a great question. Here's the thing: authenticity is not about telling everything. Okay. All right. That's not what authenticity is about. It's about telling the truth. And so again, it's not about telling everything. It's about telling the truth. And the key is intentional vulnerability. So that means you acknowledge what's real, but you frame it in a way that's going to empower and motivate and give your team members a level of security. So for example, you could say, yes, this is hard, but here's how we're going to move forward together. You notice how I said we together. That's leading with heart, humanity, as well as strategy. And so I always encourage leaders, again, our favorite words, Randy, transparency and vulnerability. So it's not about telling everything, but it is about telling the truth. And again, incorporate those personal stories and use phrases like, we are going to get through this. Yes, this is hard. I'm in this with you. We're going to move forward together. And that, again, is where people will say, you know what? This is hard, but I appreciate knowing that I have a leader who recognizes that it's hard and they're navigating and they're adapting too. And we are in this together.
Yep. I love that. All right. So let's, I just want to let everybody know the next polling question is up. So I need everybody to get their answer in. I'm closing my end. It'll stay open for you, but Denise and I are going to move forward. And I want to now pivot from the clear and purpose-driven communication to our learning objective number 3, which was that around the leadership behaviors that inspire. And so let's dig into, in the last, we got a little over 10 minutes to go. We can go a little longer if need be, but so let's dig into what behaviors build the most trust. We talked about trust at the beginning and the importance of trust and how I think, vulnerable leadership creates trust. And well, I don't just think it, I know there's stats out there, but what I assume I just may have stolen one of your answers, but what behaviors build the most trust quickly when leading teams in general, but maybe it's a difference between in general and through disruption, through the noise. What kind of behaviors do you look for or help people with?
I love this question because I'm a disruptor.
Hey, nice.
So I think I'm going to just self-certify myself as a disruptor. So I so love this question. Now, 3 behaviors that I coach on constantly with leaders regarding leading through disruption. And again, this is why I just feel like this year is the year where people are saying, look, we need some help here. Those 3 behaviors are consistency, and our favorite word, Randy, transparency, and visibility. So here's the thing. If your team is only hearing from you when something's wrong, that means you're managing. You're not leading. And there's a difference.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. But when you show up with presence and you deliver on your promises and you create spaces for honest dialogue, and notice I'm using the word dialogue. I'm not using the word discussion, because discussion is where at least two people are exchanging thoughts, perspective, ideas, and they're making a decision. Sometimes you need to have honest dialogue before you get into the decision making or the discussion to result in a decision. Honest dialogue is where people at the table are sharing their feelings, their perspectives, their thoughts, and others that are not speaking are listening to learn and understand. Because in disruption, people they don't just need direction, they need connection. Because when there's a big disruption, you feel like you're all over the place. And so again, the behaviors that I'm encouraging each of you to seek guidance or just get complete with is consistency, transparency, and visibility, and practicing that on a consistent basis, especially when you're interacting with your team members in a highly visible, business critical messaging platform.
Yep. Awesome. Let's move on then into that same type of concept, but resilience, because we just talked about disruption, and there's a lot of disruption, I can't talk, I guess, today, disruption happening all over. Obviously, you look at the world, there's this disruption. Wow, why is that such a hard one for me to say? Disruption, there we go.
Why is that? Why is that, Randy?
I don't know, but I'll be vulnerable and say that I can't say that all the time correctly. But resilience is so important. It's a buzzword. You're hearing it. I'm not sure if we all know what resilience means, but what does it look like in a team setting, and how do leaders foster this resilience when there's disruption going on within a profession or a world?
This is a bit of a challenging question for me, and I'm going to share with you why it's challenging for me to respond, because a number of us, and I'll be fully transparent, and I'm not asking anyone to disclose this, but I'm 49 and I was raised in a very traditional two-parent household. My father served in the Air Force. And so, one of his rules is, if you want to be successful today, start with making up your bed. Like, don't leave the house without making up your bed. That's the first way to start. And so there's a lot of structure. And when it came to work, my father was, to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. There were a lot of isms that my dad programmed to where if it didn't feel or look like progress, then I automatically felt that I was failing. And I love my dad. Mm-hmm. And, as the talent pipeline continues to shift to where, 10 years ago, you primarily had older millennials, Gen Xers, and boomers. Well, the boomers are gone. They've retired. And so now the most highly populated generation in the workforce right now are millennials, younger millennials, and the Gen Zers are coming in strong. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I know there's a lot of social gaps and leadership gaps when it comes to intergenerational or cross-generational teams and motivating high performance during these times of uncertainty. And so to answer your question, I'm going to use a word that I've had to understand that what it meant 5 years ago doesn't mean that today, and that's resilience. Right. Embracing the mess.
Yep.
You've got to embrace the mess. You've got to allow your team to fail, because even though it looks like progress, or excuse me, it feels and looks like failure, it's really progress in motion. It's not perfection. It's not perfection, but it's progress. And so when people feel psychologically, think about this, Randy, when you are working in an environment where you feel it is okay to try, and even if I try, I may fail, but from that failure, I'm going to learn, I'm going to go back, identify, a better practice, and then try again. Because great leaders model that by celebrating small wins, embracing the mess, encouraging reflection and then normalizing, making it okay to correct, like what they call it, course correction, in finance especially, because again, precision is praised. It's the critical deliverable. However, it's also important to remember that progress builds momentum and momentum builds resilience. So we have to, as leaders that come from an older generation, especially looking at the incoming, is to kind of navigate that other R word, the resentment. Like, man, when I was growing up, we didn't have mental health check-in days. That's fine. But then you've got to get back to embracing the mess and allowing your team, as part of being resilient, to fail, learn, and try again.
I couldn't agree more. I think failure, nothing happens without failure. I mean, you're not going to move forward in an organization without failure. So if you are afraid to fail as an organization, then you're going to get passed by, because you're, at best case scenario, you're going to stay flat, but everybody else is going to be going up, at the people that are being innovative and creative. And I'm going to go into another stat, because I like stats and I like this stat. Organizations that display vulnerable leadership are 30% more creative and innovative, because they're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to have a misstart. They're not afraid. But what they do is, you just said it, they learn from it. And then they take that learning, but they don't just hoard it to themselves either. They're going to share it. Hey,
share.
Right. Let's get in this meeting. Let's talk about the things that did not go right. Why do we do that? Because now we all can learn from that, and you can get advice. Here's a way I did this different. Let's see if that works for you. Here's something that we learned by failing here. And so from that resilience that you were just talking about, that ability to not be afraid to have a misstart. Oh man, if we're afraid to have a misstart, we're just going nowhere. So that, to me, again, I told you I was going to talk about vulnerability a lot as we went today. That stat alone. And then, since we did mention resilience, there's another statistic out there that shows that organizations that display vulnerable leadership, employees that work there, are 40% more resilient. Now, how do you measure that? I don't know, but that's a stat that I'll say is a key factor of why vulnerable leadership is important. I'm not trying to steal this webinar talking about vulnerability.
There is a way. And this is why I love what I do, because for so many decades, effective communication was a soft skill. And in actuality, we know it is a must-have critical skill. So in terms of measuring resilience, again, that's where you have those. So quantify how many check-ins that you're having today, and look at how the format of those meetings. So if you have 10, let's say 10 biweekly meetings with your team, and the format of these meetings is, X, Y, and Z. In terms of measuring resilience, what's my level of transparency? Yep. And what efforts am I celebrating? Is it always the big wins, the macro wins? But there is absolutely ways, and I encourage everyone that wants to measure the resilience, which results in high performance, to, meet with your HR team, because, HR leaders own a lot of the psychological safety measures that are in place right now, because we all know that mental health has, become at the forefront of talent retention. And so there's ways to measure that, but definitely look at how you are checking in with your team, looking at how you're celebrating not just the big wins, but the micro wins. And, especially as finance leaders, think about energy management, not just time management, but model energy management as a part of sustaining high performance.
Yep, all great stuff. All right, let's we're getting close to time, but let's go with this question. We can go for another hour too if you want. So
I wish my schedule would permit that. But it doesn't.
My schedule is the gym right after this, because I got to get on a plane a few hours later than that. That's my only time to work out today. All right. So, which is important as leadership, is to promote mental and physical health as well. All right. So your opinion, closing out the behavior, leadership behaviors that inspire. Before I do that, last poll is up. Everybody get your answer in for the last poll. And let's go to this last question. So in your opinion, another word I can't say apparently, in your opinion, what's one small habit or or behavior that leaders can adopt today? So maybe there's one, maybe there's two, but what can they adopt? I like incremental changes. Let's start with something, and so that you can start to at least not get overwhelmed, but let's do a change or a behavior or a habit that you can lean into today to help them be more authentic and clear, have clarity in their leadership style.
Oh, this is going to be super quick because I do this all the time. Number one, what do you need from me in order to thrive today? And I ask that my kids are 27 and 30 years old. I ask any and everybody in my network, both personal and professional, what do you need from me in order to thrive today? Because what I'm not going to do is other people's work. My cup is full.
Yep.
So what that does, it gives me space, but then it also takes away some, because remember, a lot of times as perfectionists, we'll go to, well, if you're not going to do it, I'll just do it myself. No, we got to get away from that. So what do you need from me in order to thrive today? And when people present obstacles or challenges or setbacks, this is how I always answer it. That sounds really hard. What do you need from me to support you? 90% of the time, the response will be, I just needed to vent. I just needed somebody to listen. And as I was talking out loud to you, I actually was thinking of some things that I can do. So again, what do you need from me in order to thrive today? And when someone shares with you an obstacle, problem, setback, challenge, that sounds really hard. What do you need from me? Quit trying to solve everything and lean into your leadership by motivating and inspiring problem solving and high performance.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to end. I was going to ask if you wanted to wrap up our conversation today. That might have been it, but I'm going to give you an opportunity if there's anything else you wanted to add to that.
I'm good, Randy. Thank you again so much. I am now even more, and I didn't think that was possible, but I'm even more excited to join everyone during the Bridging the Gap conference in Denver next month. And please connect with me. In the meantime, I'm on all social media platforms. You can visit my website, which is www.realcommcoach.com. So Realcomm Coach, that's my Instagram handle. I'm the Effective Communication on LinkedIn. So I look forward to meeting everyone and connecting with everyone in person, but definitely stay connected in the meantime on social media.
That's awesome. And just as you heard at the beginning, we did record a podcast yesterday. That'll come out in the next few weeks. We will have all the links to everything in the podcast as well. And I'm not sure if we can do it on YouTube too, but I'm guessing we can when we post this on YouTube later today. Put the links to your website and everything that you're doing. And just so everybody knows, as we wrap up here, I do have a QR code on the screen currently. That is to go to the BTG, Bridging the Gap Conference website, btgconference.com, where you can register. This is the first year where I feel there's a chance we are going to have to cut off registrations at some point. We are ahead of last year's registration. So if you have any thought of going, please register today. I think we got more than half our registrations in the last 5 weeks last year, and we got 5 weeks to go. So I don't want you to miss out. This is a great conference. You can obviously see that by hearing Denise talk, and she'll be doing this without me interrupting her when we're at Bridging the Gap in a few weeks. So again, I'm trying to stay on for a few more minutes just in case anybody logged in. I want to make sure you get your CPE, but I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Denise for her unbelievably excellent knowledge and sharing with everybody her that knowledge. And I want to thank you for being there. And then again, if anybody wants any information about TriMerit, there's another QR code there. You can also get to btgconference.com by the TriMerit website. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I cannot thank Denise enough. We've talked a handful of times in the last 6 months, and it's just every time I'm just amazed at the knowledge that she shares. So thank you again, Denise.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. And thanks everybody for being here, and we're out.